Welcome to our Minding My Own Business workshop presented by the Fremont Group. This is our annual sales webinar. Our webinars are presented live to our presidential patrons on our Patreon site and then reposted for our Pathfinder patrons on our Patreon site. My name is Dirk Dieters. I'm the Executive Director of the Fremont Group. Fremont Group is a nonprofit organization providing services to the small business community for the past 19 years. We hope you'll visit our website at www.tfginfo.org for information about the Fremont Group, and also visit our Patreon site for posts and information and significant amount of beneficial material. Our webinar series is a series of 6 different topics every other month presented by myself to our Patreon site members. Please visit our Patreon site at patreon.com/the Fremont Group. Minding My Own Business is a trademark of the Fremont Group, and it is based upon a book which I authored of the same name. Minding My Own Business can be purchased on Amazon or can be purchased on our website at www.tfginfo.org. It's the story of a person running their own business and integrates into it all of the 6 responsibilities of the small business owner. Today we're going to talk about sales. We'll start off with 3 definitions: sales, marketing, and order taking. Remember that this webinar is geared towards sales. Sales is the act of motivating someone to purchase your product. All of those words are critical. It is an act of motivating someone to do something they would not have done otherwise, which is the purchase of your product. Marketing is conditioning a group of prospective purchasers of your product regarding the benefits of your product. Some products are able to sell themselves and don't require a proactive sales function. They only need exposure to prospective purchasers, either through the internet, television advertising, or other modes of communication. Marketing can overlap into order taking, but rarely overlaps with sales. Order taking is the act of making the purchase of your product available to a preconditioned purchaser. Often this is done in coordination with marketing. When your product already has an established benefit in the eyes of the purchaser, order taking is appropriate. However, order taking is not sales. Sales is an act of motivating someone to purchase your product. Our experience in working with small business owners reveals that there are 2 types of sales efforts in the marketplace. One is a functional sales effort, one is a dysfunctional sales effort. As we go through these definitions, look at your own company and determine just how functional your sales effort truly is. The qualities of a dysfunctional sales effort are that they rely upon the efforts of individuals to produce your sales. They have an inability to identify bottlenecks. They use an inefficient use of sales sets, skills, and compensation. And there's a tendency to hire this hotshot. Let's examine these. The first one, relying upon the efforts of individuals. You will hire a salesperson. You'll give them some basic training and product background and knowledge, maybe some leads, whatever the case may be, and then you put them out in the field or however you sell, and they try to sell. This means that your sales effort will simply be the sum of the quality of the individual that you have. Turnover, other factors, and so on can create large variations in your sales. Secondly, you have an inability to identify bottlenecks. What are we referring to when we talk about a bottleneck in sales? There are different functions that are required. You have to generate leads, you have to qualify those leads, you have to close the leads, you have to have customer service. There are different types of functions within a functional sales system, and you need to be able to identify which ones are really working and which ones are not. The bottlenecks are those functions which are not producing at the level that you desire, and you need to divert resources to address those so that you can identify the areas that you want to uh, promote. Inefficient use of skill sets and compensation often happens when you put a very highly trained salesperson out there and expect them to find and dig up their own leads, which could be done by someone at a much lower cost. Could be done in different manners and so on. It may not even be within the skill set of someone you have. Someone might be a great closer, but simply lousy at finding leads. And therefore, you have a compensation system that's paying very high compensation to these highly qualified people, and yet you're having them perform some very meaningless tasks, things that are not meaningless, but low-level tasks that can be accomplished by someone with a much lower level of compensation. You will also find a desire to hire the hotshot. This requires a little bit of discussion in itself. Um, you want to go out and find somebody who has all your product knowledge, that is a go-getter, that knows everyone in the industry and has lots of leads with them, and they can come right in and they're the hotshot and they can make a difference in your sales. Frankly, there is a time when that can be worthwhile if you are really in a bind or in a startup or something like that. But there's an awful lot of problems that exist when you start hiring that hotshot. Number one, they probably came from another company and are bringing some of the leads with them. Well, sooner or later, they're going to leave and go to another company and take your leads and your customers with them again. Secondly, they're very highly paid, and they will throw your entire compensation levels out of whack with them being more highly paid than other people in the same positions. And they can hold you hostage. If you start relying on that hotshot to create a large amount of your sales, when they decide to leave or try to basically extort higher compensation from you, you have nowhere else to go. Consider those factors or qualities or so on against a functional sales system. A functional sales system is just that. It is a system. It's a system that addresses the four areas of sales: lead generation, lead qualification, closing, and customer service. Let's examine each one of those. The first function in any sales system is lead generation. Lead generation is the process of identifying potential purchasers. This can be done from your marketing or in a more proactive manner. A definition of lead should be made. For example, you may define a lead as a person who is reasonably expected to use the product. These can come from lists, they can come from all sorts of different manners and modes to simply compile a large number of potential purchasers of your product into your sales funnel. This is a very low-level function. It should not be done by people who are your closers, for example. This should be done in a manner that simply produces large numbers of leads or a person who is reasonably expected to purchase your product that you can use in your next steps. Once you have generated leads, your next step is lead qualification. Lead qualification is taking your master list of leads and identifying persons who are likely to purchase your product in a reasonable time frame. Lead generation is the process of identifying the potential purchasers. Lead qualifications are whittling it down to qualified prospects. Again, a definition that's suitable to your company should be made. For example, a person who is reasonably likely to purchase your product in the next 3 months. Different time frames, different sales cycles for different industries, all go into your definition, but it needs to be laid out quite clearly. Lead qualification requires a higher level of product knowledge than lead generation, and therefore is more costly. It should be accomplished by someone with more experience and able to identify leads that are qualified leads that can then be passed upon to your more highly paid closers. The third function in the sales process is closing. Closing is the act of converting qualified leads into purchasers. This is the highest level of sales and requires the most qualified and effective of all persons. As a result, these are also the highest paid persons. The reason this function should be limited to qualified leads and that the entire sales system should be designed to produce a consistent flow of those qualified leads to your closers is because of the level of compensation that they require. The entire sales system should be designed to produce a consistent flow of qualified leads to your closers. That seems obvious, but most companies ignore that and have no way of monitoring and identifying the bottlenecks. For example, how many leads do we need to have each day, week, month, year, whatever you require? How are those being generated? What can we do on those? And what results do we need out of that so that you can monitor the results of lead generation? Then, how do we monitor the results of lead qualifications? How are those people then converted into qualified leads so that we know the numbers that we have to have that are required to produce a consistent flow of qualified leads to your closers. Closing, for example, I mean, that's the end result of what we're doing here. And so if you have a sales system that right now produces, say, one qualified closing opportunity per day for your salespeople, if that could be increased to 2 a day, you would be doubling the results that come through. The other thing you're doing by creating this sales system is you are eliminating the ability of someone to hold you hostage. There are interchangeable parts people that can be plugged into each of those different functions, taught how to do so, paid appropriately, and your sales can be a lot more consistent and monitored than if you're relying upon individual people.